Hello, I'm Fatima. I'm going to talk about core strength and stability. So, I would like to start with a brief on the core anatomy. As we all know that core is not a single muscle, but it is a group of muscles, and they help to give us the stability and the mobility that we need for our body. So the main core muscles, they form a cube in our body, and the main muscles are, so we have the diaphragm that forms the roof or the lid, you can say. And we know that the diaphragm is one of the most important and largest muscles that we need for inspiration and breathing. Then the front side, we have our abdominals. Then on the bottom, we have our pelvic floor muscles and our glutes. The back side, we have our back extensor muscles that are our multifidus and our erector spinae, which give us the back extension. They perform the back extension. And our front muscles, they help in forward flexion, or we can say forward bending. These are our main muscles which give us a lot of stability, but there are also a few muscles that assist these muscles in terms of the mobility, where we have our hamstrings and our latissimus dorsi and our so these muscles are the main ones that assist these, and they also form a very important part of our core. So I would like to go on the core stability now. So this is a definition on core stability, that the ability to control the position and movement of the trunk over the pelvis to allow optimum production, transfer, and control of force and motion to the terminal segment in integrated athletic activities. So what does this definition mean? It means to say that your core has to give you that much stability in order to transfer force to your terminal segment. That means your upper limb and your lower limb. It has to be that stable that it can generate the force your body acquires to have in the upper body and lower body in any of your activities. If that is the dry land, if that is swimming, if that is any other sport that you're looking at. I have given an example of swimming only, since we would relate to that a little more. And we know that in swimming, if our core is not weak or not stable, if it's weak and if it is not stable, then we are going to end up sinking in the water. We've heard our coaches telling us time and again that your core is not strong, your core is not, but we don't know the emphasis and the importance of it, which I would like to cover. So why is core so important in swimmers specifically? So as we know that swimmers are not that blessed as land athletes to have a stable base of support. They mainly have to create their base of support. They are the only people in a fluid environment, and they have to all the time battle with the instability of a base of support. Land athletes always have something to push off from, but swimmers don't. So in order to create this, they need that efficient stability and that core strength that they are able to create their own base of support and then further stabilize their upper limb and their lower limb. It forms a kinetic chain between your upper body and your lower body. It is always said that our core is the foundation of our body. And as we know that if our foundation is strong, then everything we build on it will be strong. And if our foundation is weak, then how much ever you work on your upper body, your arms, your legs, your kick, it's not going to give you that result in that optimum way that you look forward to. Poor core can lead to technique flaws. So we always, as swimmers, and you've heard that your coaches are always telling you that little that you need to improve on your technique. Even if it's a minor thing, it is of utmost importance, because your technique is what makes you a fast swimmer. Otherwise, you are competing and you are not going to reach that time zone that you want to achieve. So a poor core always makes your upper limb and lower limb compensate in a way that it should not. And that is the main thing, that our body is designed in a way that if you are supposed to do a given movement and go from point A to point B, you are going to go there no matter what. And you are going to compensate with whatever it takes to reach that thing because that is your goal. But the most efficient way of doing it will only make you reach faster. So a poor core will make you utilize your upper body and lower body so much that your energy expenditure is going to double. You're going to get fatigued really soon, and then you're going to end up making errors in your stroke and your kick. And that is going to, in a way, give you that technique flaw and somewhere lead you to a lot of a high risk of injury. As we already know, shoulder in swimmers is one of the most common areas that gives us pain and discomfort. So imagine if you have a weak core and you are overloading the shoulders even more. I mean, that is going to cause a lot of strain on the shoulders 2 times. Then to maintain a streamlined body position in water. Streamlined position is so important even if you are taking a turn or even if you are swimming the surface in a straight line. Because if you have a weak core, then you are just going to sink and you're going to have a fishtail movement. You're not going to go straight in a streamlined way, you're going to go sideways. And that is going to take, again, a lot of energy from your hips and your legs, and you will not be able to swim faster even if you think you are pulling well in your strokes and you are kicking very well. It thereby will increase your speed and power of a particular swim's freestyle, backstroke, butterfly, or breaststroke. All the strokes require core to be really strong because, and thereby it will improve your overall swimming time because of all these movements that require a strong core, and then you're going to just push forward. Your overall swim timing is definitely going to improve. Generate a body roll in freestyle and backstroke. You must have heard with your coaches that the body is rotating a lot, and we don't understand that the body needs to rotate or doesn't need to rotate at some point. But the main rotation of your body comes from the core and mainly from the obliques that are your side muscles. A very, very little of your rotation comes from your hips, and that's why rotation is very important. Storing and recovering elastic strain energy. So energy, as you know, every swimmer has a strategy of swimming, and somewhere storing energy comes in that strategy. You need to know when to give in your best, when to save up, and thereby go faster. So storing your energy is always going to help you, and a strong core is something that gives you that. You need to know that when you are coming up to take a breath, and your diaphragm helps you in that, that's when you need your energy. So you save up and then you end up spending your energy on something that requires it. So now core stability and strength is one thing, but we also need to know how to assess it, because anything that doesn't go on an assessment, you will not be able to quantify, and you will not be able to give anyone an idea on how good or poor their core is. And by assessing something only, we will know on what level is the weakness there, and what are the weak links, what are we supposed to look after, and so forth. So a functional movement is supposed to be very closely related to your core stability and thereby your improvements in the performance. So functional movement is the ability to produce and maintain a balance between mobility and stability along the kinetic chain while performing fundamental patterns with accuracy and efficiency. What does this mean? This means a functional movement is something that challenges your balance even when your body is moving. And the entire kinetic chain has to be involved in that. So even if one link is missing, it is going to hamper the other movement. And as we know, the kinetic chain, the foundation of that is your core. So we have 7 fundamental tests that are used to assess your movement and your mobility and also the stability. The 7 tests are these: the deep squat, the hurdle step, the inline lunge, the active straight leg raise, the trunk stability push-up, your shoulder mobility, and the rotatory stability. So you must be knowing that these tests are so important in swimmers because they are covering every aspect that is very important for swimmers. You can even only see by the diagrams on their movements that how important the core needs to be in this. So there is a small video after this where the functional movements will be explained in a better way.
In order to best prepare you for the FMS, we put together this video of all the movements we will be asking you to perform. Please be sure to let us know if there's any pain while performing any of the following movements. Stand tall with your feet approximately shoulder width apart and toes pointing forward. Grasp the dowel on both hands and place it horizontally on top of your head so your shoulders and your elbows are at 90 degrees. Press the dowel so that it's directly above your head. While maintaining an upright torso and keeping your heels and dowel in position, descend as deep as possible. Hold the descended position for a count of 1, then return to the starting position. Stand tall with your feet together and toes touching the test kit. Grasp the dowel with both hands and place it behind your neck across the shoulders. While maintaining an upright posture, raise the left leg and step over the hurdle, making sure to raise the foot towards the shin and maintaining foot alignment with the ankle, knee, and hip. Touch the floor with the heel and return to the starting position while maintaining foot alignment with the ankle, knee, and hip. Repeat the test on the other side. Step onto the 2x6 with a flat left foot and your toe on the 0 mark. The right heel should be placed at the indicated mark. Place the dowel along the spine so it touches the back of your head, your upper back, and tailbone. While grasping the dowel, your left hand should be against the back of your neck and the right hand should be against your lower back. Both toes must be pointed forward with feet flat, maintaining an upright posture so the dowel stays in contact with your head, upper back, and tailbone. Descend into the lunge position so that the left knee touches the 2x6 behind your right heel. Return to the starting position. Stand tall with your feet together and arms hanging comfortably. Make a fist so your fingers are around your thumbs. In one motion, place the right fist over your head and down your back as far as possible, while at the same time taking your left fist up your back as far as possible. Do not creep your hands closer after their initial placement. Repeat the test on the other side. Lie flat with the back of your knees against the 2x6 with your toes pointing up. Place both arms next to your body with palms facing up. Hold the toes of your left foot towards your shin, with the left leg remaining straight and the back of your right knee maintaining contact with the 2x6. Raise your right foot as high as possible. Repeat on the other side. Lie face down with your arms extended overhead and your hands shoulder width apart. Pull your thumbs down in line with the forehead for men, chin for women. With your legs together, pull your toes towards your shin and lift your knees and elbows off the ground. While maintaining a rigid torso, push your body as one unit into a push-up position. You may be requested to repeat the test at a different hand placement. Get on your hands and knees over the 2x6 so your hands are under your shoulders and your knees are under your hips. The thumbs, knees, and toes must contact the sides of the 2x6 and the toes must be pulled towards the shins. At the same time, reach your right hand forward and left leg backwards like you are flying. Then, without touching down, touch your right elbow to your left knee directly over the 2x6. Return to the extended position. Then return to the start position. You will then be asked to perform the same test with the left arm and leg extending, the left elbow and knee touching. With your feet together, place your right palm on the front of your left shoulder. While maintaining palm placement, raise the right elbow as high as possible. Lying on your stomach, place your hands palm down under your shoulders. With no lower body movement, press your chest off the surface as much as possible by straightening your elbows. Then, from all fours, rock your hips towards your heels. Lower your chest to your knees and reach your hands out in front of your body as far as possible.
So I hope the video was helpful in order to understand what are the 7 functional screen tests that we do. You must have noticed that most of these movements take a lot on your core stability in order to get the movement done in an efficient manner. So once we have observed our athletes do these movements, we know what are the weak links, what is the real problem that they face. If there is a lumbopelvic hip stability issue, if there is a flexibility issue, we get a complete idea or a partial idea in terms of what can be done and how to move forward in case of making that tailored program for them. So the scoring of this functional movement screen is a very basic scoring. It is a 0 to 3 scoring, where we give a 3-pointer to someone who has performed the test in the way it is demonstrated and in the best way possible. A 2 scoring is given for any imperfection in terms of supposing the participant loses its balance or is unable to maintain the movement for the complete move, unable to complete the movement. Then if there is any other, it's bending too much, something like that. The first score is given when the athlete is not able to even initiate the starting movement. That's when we give the first pointer. And 0 is given when there is any amount of pain. That's when we grade it as 0. So the functional movement screen gives us an idea on how to make a tailored program for the athlete, and all the components can be covered in terms of flexibility, mobility, and stability. Core assessment. Now we would want to know how strong the core is. For anyone to derive a program and go forward, we need to know how strong the strength of the core is. So once we are done with the core stability, we would go on this core assessment to know how the athlete is currently with their core muscle strength and how we can further scale the training for them. And also we would get an idea on how prone is an athlete for injury or the risk of injury, particularly low back pain, since we know low back pain is one of the major causes of low back pain is a weak core. So the core assessment can be done in 3 different ways. One is the first and the most common way and is used by most of the athletes, is the isometric core strength. Here the isometric means you hold the position for a period of time with no movement of the body. So the static isometric test, I would like to share a video on that too.
In this assessment, we are going to be discussing the McGill's torso test. Unlike many muscular endurance assessments where our goal is to obtain a score to put us in either a good or a fair category, our goal here is to assess the endurance of the front, back, and sides of the body to see if there's any muscular imbalances that could put you at risk for back pain. First and foremost, it's imperative that you always walk your client through the process of the assessment beforehand and make them aware of the objective or purpose of the assessment so they know what they're doing and why. If your client suffers from chronic low back pain, has had recent back surgery, or is in the middle of a low back flare-up, it may not be appropriate to administer this assessment. If they experience pain during any portion of the assessment, stop. The first component of this assessment is the trunk flexor endurance test, which assesses the anterior muscles of the core that stabilize the spine. Proper alignment of this assessment position requires the client to be seated with the hips and knees bent to 90 degrees, aligning the hips, knees, and second toe. Instruct the client to fold his or her arms across the chest, touching each hand to the opposite shoulder, leaning against the board position at a 60-degree incline. Keep the head in a neutral position. Instruct the client to engage the abdominals to maintain a flat to neutral spine. The back should never be allowed to arch during the test. The trainer can anchor the toes under a strap or manually stabilize the feet if necessary. It is important to ask the client to press the shoulders into the board and maintain this open position throughout the test after the board is removed. The goal of the client is to hold this 60-degree position for as long as possible without the benefit of the back support. Allow the client to practice this position before testing. Once the client is ready to begin, the trainer starts the stopwatch as he or she moves the board about 4 inches back. while the client maintains the 60-degree suspended position. Terminate the test and record the time when there is a noticeable deviation from a neutral spine, such as shoulders rounding forward or excessive arch in the low back. No part of the back should touch the backrest. The next portion of this is the lateral endurance test, also known as the side bridge test, which assesses the muscular endurance of the lateral core muscles. Similar to the trunk flexor endurance test, this time test involves static isometric contractions of the lateral muscles of the core. In addition to the previously mentioned contraindications, this assessment may not be appropriate for clients with shoulder pain or weakness. After explaining the purpose of this test, describe the proper body position. The starting position requires the client to be on his or her side with legs extended, aligning the feet on top of each other or in a tandem heel-to-toe stance. Have the client place the lower arm under the body and the upper arm on the side of the body. When the client is ready, instruct him or her to assume the full side bridge position, keeping both legs extended and the sides of the feet on the floor. The elbow of the lower arm should be positioned directly under the shoulder with the forearm facing out. The forearm can be placed palm down for balance and support. And the upper arm should be rested along the side of the body or across the chest to the opposite shoulder. The hip should be elevated off the mat and the body should be in a straight line. The torso should only be supported by the client's foot or feet and the elbow and forearm of the lower arm. The goal of the test is to hold this position for as long as possible. Encourage the client to practice this position prior to attempting the test. When the client is ready to begin, the trainer starts the stopwatch as the client moves into the side bridge position. Terminate the test and record the client's time when there is a noticeable change in the trunk position or a deviation from the neutral spine, such as hips dropping downward, forward, or backward to maintain stability and balance. The final portion of the assessment is the trunk extensor endurance test, which assesses the endurance of the back extensors. In addition to the contraindications that were previously mentioned, this test might not be suitable if a client with major strength deficiencies where the individual cannot lift the torso from a forward flex position into a neutral position, a client with a high body mass in which it would be difficult for the trainer to support the client's suspended upper body weight. After explaining the purpose of the test, explain the proper body position. The starting position requires the client to be prone, positioning the iliac crest at the table edge while supporting the upper extremity on the arms, which are placed on the floor or on a riser. While the client is supporting the weight of his or her upper body, anchor the client's lower legs to the table using a strap. If a strap is not used, the trainer will have to use his or her own body weight to stabilize the client's legs. The goal of the test is to hold a horizontal prone position for as long as possible. Encourage the client to practice this position prior to attempting the test. When ready, the client lifts the torso until it's parallel to the floor with his or her arms crossed over the chest. Start the stopwatch as soon as the client assumes this position. Terminate the test when the client can no longer maintain the position. Record the client's time on the testing form. Now we're going to walk through an example to see how we can actually use this information with our clients. In this example, we will say that they have a trunk flexion score of 75 seconds, a right side bridge score of 48 seconds, a left side bridge of 50 seconds, a trunk extensor endurance of 70 seconds. To calculate the ratios that we're looking for, we will first divide flexion by extension. So 75 divided by 70, which gives us a value of about 1.07. The next one we will calculate is the right side by the left side, which is 48 divided by 50, which gives us a value of 0.96. The last portion has two parts, so we will do both sides divided by the extensor value. So for the right side to the extensor value, we have 48 divided by 70, which gives us about 0.69. And for the left side to extensor value, we have 50 divided by 70, which gives us a value of about 0.71. So what does this all mean? The desired value for flexion to extension is less than 1, so this client's score is slightly high. The desired value for the right side to left side ratio is plus or minus 0.05 of 1. So this client's right to left side score is within the 0.95 to 1.05 range. That means that one side is slightly stronger, but not so much stronger that it could potentially lead to back pain. Finally, the desired value for the side to extensor ratio is less than 0.75, and both the left side to extensor and the right side to extensor values are below that. So as a trainer, all of these client scores met the recommendations except for flexion to extension, which is slightly above the recommended 1.0 score. As a fitness professional, this means you should work to promote endurance of the trunk extensors to reduce back pain during your sessions.
So I hope this video was really helpful in order to know that how important these three tests are for swimmers, since we know that they have to maintain their body position for like a given amount of time, and in order to complete the particular lap, they need to keep their body at that position for a really long time. So we get an idea on the isometric strength, and the other way of testing the core is the isoinertial strength. Here, in order to not get too technical, we have to just know that the resistance stays constant. So we can use body weight because body weight does not change, and we are not adding any other further load to the body. So here we ask the participant to do how many ever extensor dynamic extensions as possible while lying prone, and at a given tempo they have to maintain their body position in a certain way in the prone position and do how many ever extensions as possible. After that, we get an idea on the endurance in a dynamic manner. So the previous one was the endurance in a static manner. This is the endurance tested in a dynamic manner. After this, we would do a core functional testing. This is actually of utmost importance because in the end, everything boils down to your functional movement. And you want to do a movement with the best stability and the best mobility. So the best functional core testing, we use the STAR excursion balance test. Here we would have the participant standing at the point that you can see here in the middle, and we would ask them to take one leg at a time. So if the participant is keeping their right leg down, then the left leg has to be able to touch each line efficiently without losing balance and maintaining their core as stable as possible. So you can see that the participant is starting with the line right behind him and then going in a clockwise direction and trying to complete the entire circle in as much as possible. Now the other test is the single leg squat. Here we would actually look for the movement and analyze the quality of the movement. In order to perform the single leg squat, we would just ask the athlete to do as many repetitions or at least 5 or 10 repetitions at a 45 and a 60-degree angle. And we would observe the movement. We would also observe the knee that is on the ground, and the knee should not move to inwards. We call it the knee valgus, which is not really recommended, and the knee should be as stable as possible, and that would only be possible if your core is stable and strong, because then it's going to affect the entire kinetic chain downwards. After we test the core endurance, now we would want to test the core muscle power. How are we going to do that? We would want to take a series of medicine ball throws. We keep the medicine ball to be around 2.5 to 3 kgs. And we look to cover the entire core, that is the front, both the sides, the right and the left, and the back. So a series of 4 throws are done. The forward throw, the lateral throws, and the back throw, as you can see in these photos. And the maximum distance covered by the throws is recorded, and that's how we get an idea on the core muscle power. Now, once we have done the testing of the core stability and the strength, we would then further design a core program for any participant or any athlete. But there are few guidelines that are very, very important before we design a core program for anyone. And as you know, every athlete is different and every person has their own weak links. And that's why the core program will be best if it is designed for each athlete individually. So these are the guidelines that we should follow before we design a program for anyone. The first one is the most important, and that is the exercises have to be pain-free. So why is this important is because if the exercise is giving you any discomfort or any pain, it is a ticking time bomb and going to lead to any amount of injury. And we do not want that. The last thing we want is for anyone to develop pain and further an injury. So if there is any exercise giving you any discomfort, you must report it and you must discontinue or try to modify it by any way, either by changing the by the form of the exercise, by doing a scaled down version, because maybe your core is not ready for that exercise at this given point of time. Then we always start with simple exercises and have a gradual progression. This is very important because we do not want to jump into something that our body is not ready for and then further land up in an injury. So you always start with simple and then progress. And this goes for all the muscles in your body, and that's why it is also for your core. So the few gradual progressions can be made in terms of speed, because a slower movement is always more technique oriented, and it is far more easier to control than a faster movement done in a better technique. From simple to complex, then from known to unknown. Known movements are always easier because of muscle memory. If you have already done a particular exercise or you've been doing an exercise for a given amount of time, your body has the muscle memory for it, your mind is trained for it, and it is always going to become easier after a certain amount of time. That's when you jump to an unknown exercise. Even if you change a particular aspect of it, in terms of the weight or the resistance or anything, it is going to be more difficult than the known exercise. Eyes open to eyes closed. This works on the phenomenon of where your eyes are open, your body is trusted by your visuals. And that's when you get a feedback by your visuals that how to balance and how to maintain that stability. But when your eyes are closed, your visuals are shut off, and then you have only your joint sense that we say. Also we call it the proprioception, that helps you guide through, and that's when it actually challenges your core and also multiple systems in your body. From static to dynamic, again, I can say static exercises are always not very easy, but they can be started off with, because static exercises are not challenging the movement also. They are making sure that your body is in a controlled, aligned position. But when you move to dynamic, you have to maintain that position and also do a dynamic movement. The best example could be a normal plank to a Spider-Man plank. But the core has to be stable and the alignment has to be at its optimum level. The other one is consult a doctor or a clinician if exercises are done to treat back injury. Now, you are all aware that back injury has a very close relation with core. That's why every physiotherapist or every clinician will always give you a few basic core exercises to treat the back injury. But you must not jump into the core exercises on your own if you are dealing with an injury that could only flare up something, and you do not want to face any other issues and face more pain after doing an exercise and go 10 steps backwards. That's why please consult a doctor or a clinician if you are already battling an injury. Maintain regular breathing at all times. This is one of the most important points, and it is treated like an underdog, but regular breathing is very, very essential, even if you are holding a certain position. Even if you're holding a plank, regular breathing is so important, because if you stop your breath, you do not understand that your pressure increases and the the muscle that you are targeting is not going to be efficiently growing. It's not going to grow in its strength. That's why regular breathing is very, very, very important. There are a few, okay. This is how you are going to progress in terms of designing a core program for someone from a very basic level, then scaling upwards. But the main aim of this level of a program is your stabilization and your technique. That's why we focus so much on first getting the technique right. Because if your technique is not right, your body is going to compensate by any other muscle or by any other movement, which could be incorrect and will further lead into high risk of injuries. So these are a few of the most common exercises that we give to our swimmers. We have flutter kicks, leg raises, candlestick, then your bird dog, hundreds. And often you must have heard many people saying and telling you that first get the technique right. So here there is no resistance required. It is only body weight, because first, if you can battle the body weight, only then you can add resistance and further challenge the core. After this exercise, after these exercises have been mastered and you have a green signal on that these are fine and you can go ahead with it, then you can challenge your core with some movements like this and add the strength component to it with stability. In order to do this, you can take help of a few things like the medicine ball, which can add the challenge by adding instability. Because the medicine ball challenges your core in a way that it will give you a very unstable surface. So you have to challenge your core and make sure that you are stable even on this ball. Then you can add medicine balls and dumbbells and make the movements even more difficult. But to make sure that you reach this level, you need to have a baseline core strength, and that's why your technique is very, very important. Post this, you can start integrated and explosive movements. Integrated movements means linked movements and combined movements that your body can do when your core has reached a certain level of stability and strength. So then you know that your technique has been mastered, and now you can challenge it in a way that you don't have to concern about the technique anymore. These exercises here have been shown to challenge your core in a way that you can start with single leg movements now from double leg. Like you can do a single leg squat with the medicine ball at your back, so it gives you an unstable surface on your back, and you are doing a single leg squat. That's why the entire kinetic chain is involved to balance the body, and therefore you have to maintain the entire body with your core being the foundation. Then you can add a few kettlebells to add the resistance further and make it even more challenging. Along with this or post this, you can even start explosive movements with the medicine ball. The weight of the medicine ball can vary according to your core capabilities, and you can focus on all the four criteria of your core. That is your front movements, your lateral movements, your side movements, your rotations. Everything can be done. Explosive work like medicine ball throws, side throws, crunches with the medicine ball, and then explosive throwing. Even partner workouts can be done in this stage with medicine ball throws that you challenge your partner and yourself with each other's capabilities. So last but not the least, I would like to say that the core is really, really important in terms of maintaining the entire kinetic chain. And as swimmers, core is of utmost importance, and you must learn how to function how to give your core that importance and in all the movements. Thank you.